Hi everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here with a new PB&J card class, and this is another nautical themed Paint With Me card class where we'll be painting a one layer card. This is a standard size A2 4¼ by 5½ inch card, and here is a closer look at that. We'll be painting using Distress ink re-inkers used as watercolors. And this beautiful, beautiful image is from our new transparent stamp set 30-843 Seashells. And I love, this is just all one gorgeous stamp. Now, before I begin, I just want to mention I will have a full supply list on screen at the very end of the video featuring and listing all of the supplies I'm using, stamps, colors, inks, everything. So you can just hit pause and check it out in more detail at that time. Now, like I said, I'm painting with Distress ink re-inkers used as watercolors. So I just squeeze those onto my palette. Just a little dot is all you need. And I will be picking those up from that palette to paint my image. I pre-stamped this image onto Canson 140-pound watercolor paper using Memento Desert Sand ink. I love how this ink works with the Distress ink re-inkers. I feel like you can get a no-line look without straining to see what you're painting. And it seems like with these re-inkers, which are not a true watercolor, you're painting with an actual ink, when they go on top of this desert sand stamping, the desert sand stamping seems to sort of take on the color of the paint or the ink that goes on top of it. And so it makes it very easy for a no line look without feeling like you have to concentrate too much on your image, what it should be, looking at a reference, because you can still see it while you're painting it. Now I decided to do some pinks on this card. I just was in the mood for something sort of with a feminine look along with this nautical style. And so a lot of these seashells here, you see that I'm adding some nice pretty pinks. Working on also getting some shading in, some areas of light and areas of dark. And I do kind of go back and forth on this first shell that I did till I was happy with how it looked. And then when I did the other shells in this same color scheme, I was able to sort of copy that process, and it went much quicker than it is on this first one. So I first laid down some of those pinks, added in some browns just for definition at the top to keep some of the structure of the shell, so to speak, and then darkened up some of the pinks at the bottom. Now these little shells here, all I had to do was just paint the color just right on top. Very easy, no shading or anything involved. Now off to the side, I do have a dry napkin and also my water. So whenever I rinse off my paintbrush, I dab it then afterward onto the napkin before I pick up the color from my palette, and this just helps things from getting too runny, or the paint or that ink, that Distress ink re-inker, from sort of moving all over the place. It gives me a little bit more control as I am painting. You can also see that I did my bluish background first, and that helped. That way I did not have to worry about any of these painted image sort of bleeding if I touched that with the water of my brush as I painted around it. Especially like the pinks would definitely want to sort of blend and bleed out, so it was good to paint that light blue background first before I did the rest of the shells. And I'm just playing around here. I like to start light and then go darker because it's always easy to add more color, but it's harder to remove it. Although watercolor can be pretty forgiving with that. Now for this rope going around the edge, I'm just going to first paint it all with a light color. I believe this is Antique Linen Distress Ink Re-Inker. And again, you can see that the lines of that rope just sort of pick up the color that goes on top of it. And then I can go in and just add a little shading and some detail to this. Now you may see an image like this and think, oh, there's so many tiny parts to this, it's going to be so hard. But actually, I find when I'm painting, if you're painting smaller things that already have the detail in the illustration, the only part of the painting that you need to do is just put the color on top. Like that rope, for instance. It looks like there's a lot of detail to it, but really I just had to use two colors. I painted every other little spot with a darker color and added a little bit of an outline. Very large open images I find require more sort of brain power in where to put the darker color, where to put the lighter color, where to leave a highlight. Just require a little more thinking. So don't be afraid of more detailed, intricate images like this. It's often more just a matter of coloring it in than doing any shading with it. And so you can just quickly color it in, have fun picking your color choices, but not worry about doing a lot of shading. So for these little coral pieces here, I'm putting down a light pink. That's spun sugar, and again, all of those colors that are on my palette are listed on screen at the end of the video. And then adding a touch of yellow and moving down into some reds at the bottom. So the very tips are the light pink, then we've got some yellowish color mixing in, and then some red down here at the bottom. And once I put that in, if I want to blend it more, I can just come back with just my paintbrush and water to blend it into the color that it's sitting right next to. Now this would also be a great image if you like to color with markers or colored pencils, traditional watercolors. There's so many different mediums that you can use to color this in. Now for this very detailed line here up at the top, I'm using a Pitt Artist pen. This is actually one of the journaling pens, so it has a very fine tip, and so I can just trace right over that line. You could paint it for sure or use colored pencil. I just find that this is the feels the most steady for my hand is to use that marker to do that. It is a waterproof marker, so now I can add paint on top and that line that I drew is not going to blend or bleed or go anywhere. Now for this top part, I'm doing just, instead of shading on these tiny little leaves, I'm just doing some that are light, some that are dark, some that are more of like a true green color. This is the Peeled Paint Distress Ink Re-Inker color. And then I'll go in and add some that are more of a turquoise type color. And so that adds the variety and the movement to the design as opposed to getting that by doing any particular shading. Lastly, I'm going to squeeze out just a little bit of Arteza gouache paint. This is kind of like a gouache I would describe as a mix between acrylics and watercolor. And I'm going to first just sort of wet this down a little bit and then color in these little dots that are part of the image. I guess I don't know if they'd be bubbles or exactly what they are, but I wanted them to be white. So I'll zoom in here so that you can see. You could also use an acrylic paint for this. You could use liquid pearls if you wanted it to be dimensional on your card. I didn't think of that when I was making this, but now as I'm doing the voiceover, I'm thinking, oh, that would have looked really cute. You could even add some little bit of glitter, like some stickles you could squeeze onto those dots. Lots of different ways to embellish this. To finish off my card, I stamped a sentiment from our 30-590 destination sentiments. I felt like it just fit perfectly with this image and would be a great encouragement card, graduation card, anyone who's making maybe a change in their life or trying a new habit, you want to encourage them. This would be a great sentiment and a fun card to create and send for them. I sure hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. That lets us know that you would like more content and you like what you're seeing. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, as well as Instagram, our website, and blog. And all of those, including the stamps used today, will be listed and linked for you down in the YouTube description box. And here's that supply list as promised. Happy stamping!